Here I have two examples of factoring polynomials. I want you to notice that each polynomial has three terms, and the largest exponent is 2. These are called quadratic polynomials. So anytime you have a polynomial where your exponent, the largest one, is 2, they're going to be quadratic. They don't have 3 every time. Sometimes they might be missing the middle term, sometimes they might be missing the last term, but they will always have this x squared if it's a quadratic. So anytime we have something that looks like this, we're going to factor using what I call the AC method. Because quadratic polynomials are always written in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. So your number a is 1, a equals 1, is always in front of x squared, b is always in front of x, and c is always a number without a variable. What we're going to do is we are going to multiply a times c, and that gives us 1 times 6, which is 6. So in order to properly factor this out, I want you to keep in mind too that our answer is going to look like a multiplication problem. So our answer, we're going to actually have two binomials we'll end up with. And in those binomials, we're going to take this x squared and split it apart to get x times x. And then in order to get what's left over in here, that's when we use this kind of riddle right here. We need to know what number multiplies to get 6, because a times c is 6. But it has to add to get the middle term. So if you think about all the different factors of 6, we have 1 times 6, but that adds to get 7, so that's not going to work. We have 2 times 3, that adds to get 5, so we can literally just plug it in, positive 2, positive 3. And this ends up being our final answer. So what happens is, if we were to go back and distribute this, where we multiply x times x, that gives us x squared, x times 3, which gives us 3x, plus 2 times x, which is 2x, 3x and 2x add to get your middle term. That's why it has to add to get your middle term. And then 2 times 3, that's where we get this from, it has to multiply to get 6, our last term. So this next problem is going to end up just like that. We're going to have two sets of parentheses. We're going to have x and x. We're going to split those x's up. And we're going to figure out if this is our A is 1, our B is negative 8, and our C is negative 9. We have to figure out what two numbers multiply to get our A times C. A times C is negative 9. But it has to add to get our middle term, negative 8. So I know 9, that's pretty easy right off the bat, is 3 times 3. But that doesn't add or subtract to get 8, so that's not possible. There's also 1 and 9, so here's the kind of tricky part here. It doesn't always add to get negative 8. It might have to subtract, or you might have to decide which one of these has to be a negative. So in order for this to multiply to make a negative 9, one of these has to be negative, and I need it so that it adds to get a negative 8. So if I want a negative number, then my bigger number is going to have to be a negative. So I have 1 times negative 9 is negative 9, that's correct. 1 minus 9 is negative 8, that is correct. We're going to just plug that in, a positive 1 and a negative 9, and that gets us our final answer.